The other thing you want to look for also, again, is that forward head. If the computer is a little bit too far or the chair is positioned too far, you want to make sure that they can sit comfortably and upright while looking at whatever they need to look at. Okay? The other thing you want to look at is if their back is supported, especially with either younger children or smaller teenagers. I myself am not too tall or lengthy. So when you're looking at a child sitting in an adult chair, let's say at home, you want to make sure that they're fully supported. And if they're not, because of their size compared to the adult chair, you might want to put a pillow behind them so that they're not slumping forward, and just so that they have enough back support. Or you could also sometimes, depending on their needs, roll up a towel and kind of place it at the low back and see if that helps with their posture and bringing them more upright. In terms of the keyboard itself, I'm sure a lot of us who use a computer know you don't really want your wrists up like this, and you want to make sure that your wrists are level with your forearm, because that will cause some stress at the wrists. So if you can position the chair so that their arms are in that fashion, then that would be optimal. And feet on footrests. So ideally, if you can lower the table, that would be better in order to allow, or lower the chair to allow the child to really plant their feet on the floor. Because when you have your feet supported, it allows you to kind of bring yourself up a little bit better. Also, if your feet are dangling, the gravity pull on your legs might cause you to arch your back, or if you become fatigued, you might slump forward because you don't really have a surface under your feet to push up on. So if lowering the chair and table is not an option, then you can place a simple footstool under or a sturdy box if available. And while I'm talking about this ideal sitting posture, I think it's important to mention that any position for too long can cause for stiffness. I'm sure as we've maybe all experienced at one time or another. So I would encourage your children to change positions frequently, like every 15 to 20 minutes, just to move around and not to get stuck, especially looking at the computer, depending on what they're working on, what they're looking at. There's probably a tendency to kind of just get stuck in this position. So try to encourage them to change positions, like I said, every 15 to 20 minutes. Or if they're planning to do a longer session at the computer, having them actually get up and take a break every half an hour or so, just to kind of move their muscles, make sure you're not getting stiff. Okay? So I actually have a few pictures to kind of describe what I was talking about. These pictures are from the Internal Ergonomics Association, and this is from their website for ergonomics for children and educational environments. So they already have some X's for the wrong posture. So this is what I was kind of describing in terms of either the head too far forward, where you can even see the ears are in front of the shoulders from this view. And the bottom picture is a really exaggerated photo of tilted upward, either because the screen is too high or his chair, is not positioned in the best way for this child. So that's just a few visual examples. And then I also have a couple other pictures from the same website. And I'll actually direct you to the picture on the right, where you'll notice this young lady is slumping forward a little bit, which might indicate that she doesn't have enough support to keep her upright and close enough to the computer where the rest of her body would be in a comfortable position. So the picture on the left with the check mark shows they've put a pillow behind her to kind of help get her upright again. And then you'll notice she has a footstool under her feet. So it creates this nice 90-degree angle between her thigh and at her knees, between her thigh and her lower legs. So the picture on the left is what we want to strive for. Okay? So now that we've all learned about posture and what we're really supposed to look like, I'd actually like to change gears and talk about backpacks, because even with the best posture, sometimes paired with the wrong backpack, could cause some deviations. So I've listed some backpack tips that I'd like to briefly talk about, the first being the weight of the backpack. So it's recommended to keep the weight of the backpack at no more than 10 to 15% of your child's weight. This is rather important because with any bag or backpack, the weight of the bag is pulling you backwards. And so if it's too heavy, you're going to have to compensate to bring it forward and to even just maintain standing. So, if it is too heavy, you might notice this kind of the shoulders coming forward in order to accommodate the weight, or the head coming forward. Or some kids will even hyperextend or arch at the low back and hold it here because it's really pulling them that way. So if you feel like the backpack of your child looks too heavy, I would suggest just taking it and putting it on a scale, taking it on an average day and comparing it, do the calculations, and work with your child and see if there are some ways to lighten the load. It's important to wear both straps. Like I said, we want this nice upright, right in the middle posture, which is, again, it's ideal, but if you can imagine, if you're wearing just one strap, let's say it's on my right side, your tendency will be to elevate that shoulder in order to keep it there. And then secondly, you're going to kind of tilt sideways to counteract the weight that's pulling you this way. So that's one reason for the importance of wearing both straps. But again, even if you're wearing both straps and it's too heavy, you still might see some of this coming forward in order to accommodate the weight. So really look at the weight. It's important to wear the backpack over your mid-back, so you don't really want it to extend below your waist. This is really important, especially for younger children, where you want to look at is the size of the bag, first of all, appropriate for the size of the child, because sometimes if it's extending lower, it's really going to pull them backwards a little bit. And even for older children, you really want to make sure it doesn't drop too low below the waist. And I read there distribution of contents. If possible, talk to your son or daughter about how to load their backpack efficiently, placing the larger and heavier items closer to the bag, obviously, to kind of, the closer it is, the more control you have of it, and it avoids having one stress at least over pulling you on one side or way at the bottom, and then taking the lighter items and distributing it equally in the pockets of the bag, again, so that there's not an asymmetric pull on the shoulders, neck, and back. If this is an available feature on your bag, encourage them to use the hip and chest belts. So I think a lot of the bags now have those where you can strap it here or at the waist, just to help secure it, and so it's not pulling in one way or another, especially when they're moving. If you have the option to, I think it seems that most of the bags now have padded straps, but if you have the option of choosing one over the other, and if one has the padded straps, I would opt for that one. And the last one is, I think, also equally important as the weight, is teaching your child how to properly lift things and use basic lifting techniques. In putting on and taking off their backpacks, it may seem like it's just a momentary action, but for instance, if it's on the floor, you want to teach them to bend their knees. Even, if they don't feel that it's heavy, you want to get them into the habit of using proper body mechanics and not overusing their low back. So bending the knees, taking it with both hands, and coming back to standing. You want to also try to make sure that they don't do too much twisting when they're putting it over, because they usually, put it over one side first. Try to have them use more of their arm instead of doing this twisting if it's really that heavy. And too heavy for them to do that without excessive twisting, you might want to suggest placing it on a table and then having them slip their arms through it so that it's the safest way. And then I just have a few more other backpack tips. I'd recommend tightening the straps. Again, this is to go along with the fact that you don't want the backpack to hang too low below the waist. So you need to tighten the straps and get it as close to the center of your body as possible. And this may not apply for the younger kids, but encouraging them to stop often at school lockers. This is obviously dependent on the school, but stopping at their lockers will help them kind of lighten the load or drop off certain things that they may not need for the rest of the day, and really talking to your children about how important it is to protect your back and be aware of how much weight they're really carrying.